Hi, Instagram. My name is Zach Silberschlag. I'm back again this week with a HSO Meet the Musicians interview. So today we're going to be talking to Michael Maier, who is the acting associate trombone of the Hawaii Symphony and has been for since 2012. So um, he's got a lot of interesting stories to tell, a lot about his life. He, in addition to being in the Hawaii Symphony, is also in the Boise Philharmonic, and so we're going to get into that. We're going to try to invite him now.
Mike?
Hey,
Hey, can you hear and see me okay?
yes, can you see me?
Yes, I can. Um, Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Mike, you're joining us from Boise today, right?
Yes.
Where you also play principal trombone, and I mentioned that. If you don't mind, would you just tell us a little bit about how you got started with the trombone, where you're from originally, and we can go from there.
Yeah, so I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, in a suburb named Cleveland Heights. I started in public school, and my brother played trombone, my older brother, just long enough for my parents to have purchased an instrument, and then, and then he quit. So when
Nice.
I got to pick an instrument, I really wanted to play drums, and my parents weren't really into that, and they said, "Why don't you try the trombone that's sitting up in the attic?" And then a friend of mine did it, and so then I had to. So basically, and then
So, and it wasn't the band program that started you. You wanted to play an instrument of your own volition, and then you just sort of tried the drums out on them, and the trombone was what was available.
it was the band program.
Oh, okay,
You
okay,
you could pick your instrument. For whatever reason, I think you had to wait a year to do trombone. But I got
okay.
really lucky because my band teacher is a trombone player, and I
hmm
just heard he actually is retiring this week, Paul Hungerford. So he was my first teacher, and we had group lessons, and then uh, Cleveland Heights had a really nice program all the way through high
hmm
school and everything, and I had no idea how lucky I was. So we had in high school we had jazz band, we had a full symphony, and regular band and all that stuff. So Cleveland is a really good place to grow up for music opportunities, and I had no idea. I was really spoiled. So um,
Right, and so in addition to that, did you also do youth orchestra, or was it mostly centered on the band program?
yeah, I did every youth orchestra I could do. There are a couple,
Right,
um, most notably Cleveland Orchestra Youth Orchestra,
right.
and then I did a couple of jazz ensembles that were through the various colleges there, like a youth orchestra but for jazz. And I was really into jazz, but there were some people in those jazz bands that were so good that I realized
Yeah.
I better stick to reading the music. So I was um, I think Cleveland Orchestra Youth Orchestra was definitely where it clicked, and I thought I really want to do this. And you're
Right,
again so spoiled. You get to be on stage at Severance Hall, which is
right.
one of the most beautiful places, and you get coachings from the real Cleveland Orchestra members and conductors. I remember Doc Nanye came and stopped by and conduct our youth
Oh,
orchestra. Just
wow.
stuff like that would happen, and you just take it for granted because that's where you grew up. But now that I've
Right.
been a lot of other places, and now that I teach students, I realize that's not happening everywhere. So I was very
And
lucky.
so I think that we're trying to uh, hit as many demographics with our Meet the Musicians talk as possible, but I know that there are some middle school and high school musicians following the page. And so, did you have a private teacher right away, or was your band teacher that was the trombone teacher? Um, did he carry you through a lot of that initially, or how did that work?
I so I think after that elementary band, I didn't take lessons for a little while. I mean, I wasn't the most serious student.
Uh-huh.
I think it took until Koyo to really get, serious. And I did eventually start taking lessons with someone named Ernie Miller. Ernest
Mm-hmm.
Miller, if you for trombone players, he's edited and composed a lot of stuff.
Right.
Um, he was really interesting. He taught composition, and he played in all kinds of things that people don't play in anymore, like circus bands and shows that came to town. So he's really really old school. And then I had a little gap, and then I took lessons with Dave Mitchell, who plays in Burning River Brass and teaches at Kent State.
And
And
how did you
eventually,
find those? How did you find those people initially?
I think probably from teachers, like school band teachers
Uh-huh.
probably recommended. And again, I was really lucky. I didn't have to travel very far. They all kind of lived nearby. And in a little bit in high school, I had a couple lessons with Jim DeSano, who was the principal of the Cleveland Orchestra, and was very, very generous with his time and would give a lesson to anyone. So,
And so I think, yeah, I think you really touched on something that was really important, which fortunately for people in Hawaii, there is an orchestra here, a professional orchestra, and a great youth symphony. And we talked to Randy Wong, I know your friend as well, last week about youth symphony and opportunities like that. And so luckily that sort of stuff exists here as well for the students that might be watching. And but I think that Cleveland is a very particular and special place in a similar way to Honolulu, that it's uh, a big city with a lot of big city infrastructure, like a very huge orchestra and universities and stuff like that, but with a sort of small town mentality, so that it's a really accessible. So you were able to even not, you didn't come from a musical family, right? Is you found it on your own, and you were able to quickly be pointed in really the totally right direction.
yeah, without really even trying. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And so then when you were getting towards the end of high school, what was that like, and what did you sort of have in mind, or what was that experience next?
I don't think I thought it through all that clearly, but like I said, I got to do Koyo
Right. The Cleveland Orchestra Youth Orchestra, which is
every
right, and they
week.
rehearsed at Severance Hall, right, and played side by sides with the
Yeah,
Cleveland Orchestra and stuff like. Yeah.
yeah, and so I was just thinking, well, this seems fun. I'd
Uh-huh.
like to do this. Severance Hall
Yeah.
seems like a cool place to go to work. I didn't think through like exactly how long of a road that is to get there, and how much, like what the path would be. But
Mm,
but I did, again. I was just lucky that my private teacher, um, Dave Mitchell, kind of steered me in the right direction as far as applying to colleges that fit. So when I was thinking about going into music, I don't think
right.
I would have been ready for a conservatory, like a very super narrowly focused kind of curriculum.
Right.
And also, I'm not sure my parents were entirely thrilled about it. So,
Right.
um, so, so my teacher steered me towards Northwestern, which has a really great music school, especially big tradition of brass playing, and and it also has, it's a good school.
So
So
how many schools did you apply to or audition for? Did you have to, or even if you don't remember, did you do a lot of traveling around to audition and stuff like that?
yeah, a little bit. I remember some of the other like university type of music schools like Michigan, Cincinnati, and a couple of conservatories like Eastman and Oberlin. And
Right. So you were
yeah,
generally doing things that were connected to a larger institution as well, because at that point you didn't. I mean, what you ended up going to, which is Northwestern. I mean, your playing had to have been at a really high level at that point, but it was an institution that allowed you to have other resources outside of classical music, or have that option. Same
yeah,
with Oberlin. Same with yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So you could take regular classes at Northwestern. You could be a dual major, although I just did music, but yeah, that was appealing to me, and I think it was easier for my parents to kind of grasp, like, okay, if music doesn't work out, you'll have a degree.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what you're close to Chicago, right? In Evanston
Hmm.
in is Northwestern. And so what
Yeah.
kind of did you go see the symphony? Who were you studying with at that point?
Yeah, I studied with Michael Mulcahy, who plays in the Chicago Symphony, and we had also a, a shared studio. So there would be sometimes throughout the time I was there, Randy Hawes from the Detroit Symphony was there sometimes. Charlie Vernon was there some of the time. Um, we had just kind of a shared studio like that, but mainly with Michael Mulcahy, and yeah, and I went to see the CSO all the time. That was absolutely part of the education, and pretty much required for our trombone studio. We would have trombone studio class on Mondays, and if the orchestra was playing, the CSO was playing, some
You had
big
to be
repertoire, we would, go down the line and say, were you there this weekend and why not? And you better have been on your deathbed or something if you missed a really good concert. But that was
Yeah, and
definitely
go ahead.
part
Go
of
ahead.
the education. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the takeaway from that is also, if you can go to a place, you were coming from Cleveland, which has connected to obviously a great orchestra. And we have one of their members watching. Thank you, Nathaniel, is at least my second biggest fan after my mom. Um, and uh, he says we look fantastic also. Go Indians, go Cavs, the Heights. I'm sorry, I wasn't reading these comments. Koyo, TCO, Chris Cabrera. Okay, Randy's watching. So, Kat waved. Thank you, Kat. Um, so, yeah, a takeaway from this would be to go to a place that, if you can, if possible, when you're looking for a school that is connected to an orchestra, so that you can go to, and not all are like that. I mean, I know like a lot of schools with fantastic programs don't have that
Yeah.
same thing. And so, would you say even Chicago is one of the famous places to go to study brass playing, and certainly trumpet or trombone, with the famous Vincent Chikowitz and stuff like that? Uh, was there some general Chicago brass playing themes that you took away, or was it just
Mhm.
great musicianship, or do you
I,
mind talking a little about that?
yeah. So for brass players might be maybe more familiar, but just as a general sense, I think the emphasis is really on making a beautiful sound,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that sounds very simple, but it takes a lot of work to make a really beautiful singing sound on a brass instrument, and so I feel
Of
like a lot of
course.
the um, study was toward that goal, and a lot of the teachers and musicians there had studied in one way or another with Arnold Jacobs, who was
Right.
a tubist for many years with the Chicago Symphony, and a prolific teacher, and so he taught a lot of the musicians, a lot of the brass musicians in Chicago, and they kind of some of those ideas I think definitely influenced that school of playing.
And if you're a younger brass student, I'd definitely recommend, as I'm sure you would, the Arnold Jacobs Song and Wind, right? The book.
Yeah,
which I think talks a lot about the principles that you're talking about now, and beautiful sound and breathing
Yeah.
and
So in the simplest form, song is knowing what you want to sound like in your head, in your mind's
hmm
eye, and wind is having the appropriate air. And again, it sounds so simple, and
right,
it
but
ideally is, but it takes a lot of practice to become really natural at that.
right, and as trumpet players or trombone players, especially symphonic trumpet and trombone, uh, I found myself a lot of times in my youth like wanting to play faster things or not wanting to play Getchell etudes or lyrical etudes, which is all I want to do now, and is also I would say maybe 80%, 90% of what is required of us and what we need to be good at. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So for me, that served me well to have a really strong emphasis on just thinking about having a good sound. And also my private teacher in high school, Dave Mitchell, he had gone to Northwestern
Okay.
and studied with Foley. So I
You were
think I
set
got a
up in
little bit,
that thinking. Yeah.
yeah. Um, the other thing about Northwestern was I was just surrounded by people that were so much better than me,
hmm
and and I think that's only a good thing because people about your age are making sounds that you can't even believe and doing stuff that you can't imagine,
Yeah.
um, and it just is going to rub off on you and challenge you.
Right, and that's a great way to look at it because I think a lot of people hear somebody better than them, and then they're like, well, maybe I shouldn't do this or that, or they try to make themselves feel better by like, oh, that person's not actually that good. But especially in school, the hope is there's going to be people at all different levels with all different strengths that you can learn from, you
Yeah.
know, and so that's awesome. So what happened? Did you spend 4 years at Northwestern, or did you study abroad? I remember you telling me something
Yeah, so
happened, right?
I spent 4 years there, but in the middle of that, I wanted to study abroad. There was somebody else from my studio had done a study abroad semester in Vienna and got to take lessons with all kinds of the Vienna Philharmonic people, trombone players, and
hmm
see so many orchestras, which again is a big part of the education. So um, all like every big orchestra passes through Vienna, and
Yeah,
even Vienna itself has I forget how many orchestras, like many orchestras. So
yeah, yeah.
it seemed like a really cool thing to do. And since I had to follow. Oh, actually, I should mention his name, Steve Menard, because Steve played a 1 year position in the Honolulu Symphony. Maybe I forget what year, but anyway, so I was following Steve because he did this study abroad program. And then while I was there, I had a week off, and I heard about an audition for what's called Orchestra Academy
Right.
in Zurich, part of the Zurich Opera. And I left the program in Vienna,
So
and
let me just, there's a lot to unpack there. So
yeah,
so you did the study abroad, which was like did you have to like change your tuition or how did that work? I mean, because study abroad and studying abroad in Europe or Vienna, if you can, I can imagine for any musician is really an opportunity you can't pass up. So was it connected with an institution in Vienna also?
yeah, it was connected to an institution called IES. Made it really easy for U.S. college students to come and take their program. So it wasn't specifically through Northwestern, but there are a lot of kids
Right,
from like
a
Indiana.
conglomerate
And
of. So were you with good peers at that point, or was that really just letting you? That was just like a foothold in. I guess you were with Steve there because he went.
so Steve, he wasn't there then. He had done it
Okay,
before. So it varies from year to year. It's not like a full-on music school. It just
okay,
attracts a lot of music students.
right.
So you can take lessons as a part of the school. So that's what was appealing. You could use some of your tuition towards paying for private lessons. I ended
Okay,
up leaving pretty quickly, so I didn't really take advantage of it.
Right, but because I could also imagine like there are a lot of places to study in Vienna and in Salzburg, which is not that far, and so like I how did you even come up with the idea to take this Zurich Academy audition, which for most people don't know is like it's a super prestigious thing and a really hard. It is in one of the world's great opera houses, and it's it's like it can be in some ways harder than even getting a professional job. I mean, it's a kind of a tricky thing.
Um, well, I don't know how I heard about it. I don't even remember,
Uh-huh.
but maybe it was on like musical chairs or
Yeah.
something like that, which is a website for auditions.
Uh-huh.
That's probably how. I don't remember.
Right.
It was
So
just kind of on a whim, and
and then you happen to get it.
yeah. So these programs, there are several of them in Europe that are kind of like an apprenticeship, I think would be the best word.
Right. Right.
Yeah, postgraduate kind of thing. Usually you are out of school, so
Right. How
um,
old were you at this point?
20.
Uh-huh.
And so I just really got super lucky, and I think I was confident enough because I had no idea what I was getting into.
Right.
And the other thing is, I think European music students tend to stay more in the place that they're studying. So
Yeah.
to American student, it's like, oh, I'm on the continent of Europe. I'll just pop
I'll
over
just
to,
go to Zurich. Yeah.
yeah, it's like flying from New York to Texas or something. I don't know.
Right.
So
Right. So in some way that what you didn't know about the situation was helpful to you because
yeah.
you know you had a big vision to be in Vienna in the first place and you were, why not go to Zurich? And what was those types of auditions are really different. Where in America, there are some now more apprentice there are more apprentice type things happening. But not like it is in Europe and not with so like the Zurich Opera House for people that wouldn't know exactly is it's definitely comparable to the Metropolitan Opera House in size and in level and what they're doing. So the part of the apprenticeship is uh, playing with them and being a like partial member. So what was the audition like, and what was there a difference in playing, and then what was that experience like?
So the audition, it was relatively smaller. It wasn't like hundreds of people. So that's the first
Hmm.
difference.
Hmm.
Like I said, for whatever reason, it seemed like auditions there tended to be more pared down to start with. I don't know if that's just a coincidence, but it was, and the first main difference for brass players, a lot of time in US auditions, we just start with excerpts of orchestral pieces, which are just, out of context snippets of orchestral works. And in Europe, the emphasis is more on playing the solo first. So that was different. I think I played an etude, which is not always a part of a orchestral audition. Um, and then just excerpts like standard orchestral stuff. And and they definitely said like you're kind of on the young side. Usually we like for you to have finished school, and it was a little bit of um, like they were not sure at
Hesitant.
first,
Yeah.
but it worked out. Part of the program, this academy program, is you take lessons with the members of the orchestra, and then you sit in with the orchestra. I mean, you play like most of the season. You just play
Right.
all the time, and so they have essentially two sets of musicians in the orchestra. So there's five trombone players and one academy person. So
Hmm.
there's almost two complete sections, and they rotate you in. And it should be educational. They try not to just throw you into a production where you haven't had any rehearsal just to use you as cheap labor. They really have you do a new production where you're going to get to have a lot of rehearsals, but um,
It is learning on the job.
yeah, it's learning on the job. It's playing stuff that other people in the orchestra have played hundreds or thousands of times, and when you you know make an error, it's pretty people are like looking back because it's like, how do you not know
Yeah,
De Lammermoor or something like that they play in their sleep?
yeah. And so was there a difference in style in terms of the brass and trombone playing? And how was it generally being an American there? I know that there are other Americans in that orchestra. Um,
There tends to be there's a lot of American brass players in a couple European countries. That's a pretty international group.
right.
Um, so it didn't have like a really specific style. Like there are some German orchestras that you really need to have studied there and play in a very certain way. This didn't have that exactly, so it was really fine. I think I was just lucky as an American student to get one of those positions because they're
Yeah.
very um, coveted and but yeah, style wise, it wasn't a big change.
Yeah, but I guess I can also imagine though being 20 in Zurich where they're speaking like a couple different languages. I know a lot of people speak English obviously in Zurich, but they're speaking like Swiss German, right?
Yes,
Eh,
yes, Swiss
eh,
German is the outside language in the opera house. People spoke kind of a mix, a lot of English. Everyone is pretty much fluent in English or high German, so just
mhm.
textbook German. Swiss
Right.
German is really tricky, and I never got very good at it.
But so I would imagine that to some extent it could be a little bit isolating and a little bit lonely. Was it, or was it just the brass camaraderie and that everything kept you going? And were there other academy members that you were with, not in your instrument?
It was that's a good question. It was kind of lonely at first
Yeah.
because of the language.
Hmm.
The academy is pretty small, so there's like one trumpet and one horn.
Right.
Uh, we didn't hang out all the time. I lived far outside of the city, um, and they were from all different places, so there wasn't always a common language. Um,
Right.
the second year that I did it, so it was a 2 year program. Um, I decided to go back to school to Northwestern to finish my degree because like I said, I was really young, and I just thought I,
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to finish there what I started, and then
Right. And get a bachelor's degree, right?
right.
Yeah.
So I did that. So I did the first year in Zurich, went back, finished school, and then went back to Zurich for the second year. Um, there were a number of academy people. I lived with a couple, and that was great because then I was forced to speak German. So that second year it was much better, and I was kind of forced to learn the language a little bit.
So you went back to Northwestern, finished, and then went back to Zurich.
Right.
Okay. And so then you were kind of able to make a little more of your time in both places,
For sure. I think
right?
when I got first of all, it's weird to go from playing like in Zurich and you're playing with all kinds of big conductors and everything, and then you go back to school and you're playing in symphonic band, and you gotta
Yeah.
you know I just wasn't ready yet. Like I needed that time.
Yeah. Was that
So
weird when you got back to school? Was it weird? Was it like, oh, I got this, like this is easy, or was it like this is just different?
it was I mean it's pretty much just like you fall into old, you know, times. There's so much to work on. There's not I wasn't missing it in Zurich or anything like that. It was just I realized how lucky I was that I got to play with all these great conductors and professional
Right.
musicians where a lot of juniors in college don't get to do that. So
Yeah, and people ever, yeah, like,
yeah, so I
yeah,
was realized how
yeah.
lucky I was.
And so then you went back to Zurich, and I know so then what happened? So you're finishing in, did you want to stay in Switzerland, or did you want to stay in Europe, or you'd kind of made the decision to go back home, or not home, but
So
America?
yeah, so the second year I was there, there were some new trombone players in the Zurich opera section. Both of them had gone to Juilliard and kind of said, you're pretty good, but you need to go to New York and kind of get your butt kicked a little bit. And so I kind of thought about maybe doing grad school in Europe, but I kind of set my sights on trying to go to Juilliard and study with Joe Alessi, who has, the greatest reputation of trombone players. So
Of course, right.
so I was able to do that, and so that's so then I came back.
And what was that experience like, and being at Juilliard and studying with Joe Alessi, and especially also in comparison to Northwestern? Was there a difference? Yeah.
It's intense. I mean, not that that's a surprise, but I found Juilliard to be very intense. Grad school
Yeah.
was a shorter time, so you feel like you have to really, make so much progress in a short time. Um, yeah, I mean, Joe is like really lets you know where you stand. Like this is not, here's the standard. Here's how it sounds when I play it, and here's where you are. So
Right.
it's just,
There's
that's hard.
no sugarcoating. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's hard to hear. But it's, you have to hear that, and it's very helpful.
And so your
I think,
experiences in Zurich, even and Northwestern, had not been that, I guess, for lack of a better word, blunt, or they were. It was just like you were at a different point. Also, I don't.
yeah, I guess it's just everything was different each place. I think Northwestern was more nurturing, and you have more time, and you're younger, and it's a little bit more like you're
Yeah.
just trying your best. And then when you're out of school, or it feels like the clock is ticking when you're doing grad school and
Right.
stuff like that.
But I think also
Um,
probably, and what you were looking for and why you went to uh, Juilliard to study with Joe was the details, right? And so what he was like, whereas before it was more on tone production and sound, what this was not all that, right?
yeah, I mean, for me, I think he's probably different for every
Right.
student. So what I needed was yeah, probably more details and just really very oriented towards learning to play in orchestra excerpts and
Right.
audition ready type of performance, not just like we have all day. It's very like
Right.
to the point. I think
We've
maybe
got
your
we've
dad
got some
asked
good stuff. Yeah, we've got some good stuff here. So George, our longtime fourth horn, says such a long journey.
about.
And then he also said study with Joe Alessi.
Yeah.
So anyway, to clear that up. And then my dad is a good friend of Bill Nolte. He was wondering if you knew him.
Yes, he
And
is co-principal trumpet in the Zurich Opera and a super nice guy.
yeah, and another American presence there, which I'm sure
Yeah,
was helpful. Um,
yeah. And also, I wanted to say Joe Alessi was going to play a recital in early April in Hawaii, and I was so looking forward to that
right, I
because,
know.
well, one, I just wanted to hear him play, and two, we
Yeah,
were the HSO trombones. We were going to play a trombone quartet with him, and I
right.
was really looking forward to that. So hopefully that can happen again in the future.
Right, and I know the absolute awesome low brass section here, and Rudy's also a student of Joe, and Jason was bringing him out. I know that was a huge loss of for the Hawaii community, and hopefully that'll be able to happen again when
Yeah, I'm sure.
we're able to do more stuff. So after Juilliard, what happened? I know it continued to be an odd and long journey for somebody that has not one but two orchestral positions right now. It didn't happen right away.
Yeah, let's see. I so we were in New York. I'm gonna turn the camera. Wait, can you see? No. Okay.
No,
Well, my
we
wife
can't
Lindsay
see.
and I were in New
Hi,
York.
Lindsay. And I was
Um,
told by Kat, my girlfriend Kat, to ask you what it's like to be married to a violist. Because she's also a violist.
Oh,
But you
sure.
can save that question for later if you want.
I think trombone and viola, it's a really good combination. I've
Right.
known a number of couples. I mean, I do think trombone players are generally pretty laid back. You can't have
Mm-hmm.
too big of an ego and play trombone. And, I think viola is a little bit the same, like middle voice. You don't always get to be the star.
For
Um,
sure.
anyways, we were in New York. Lindsay had done New World. I was finished with school. We just knew that it was just going to be hard to just stay in New York. It's a pretty expensive, tough place to be. And
Yeah.
so she grew up in Boise and auditioned for the Boise Phil because she knew about it. Um, we lived in Portland for a time and she commuted. So I was just teaching a lot of lessons in Portland and
Why Portland? Because of is it like an interesting city, or it was located,
yeah,
or
it
just
was
no
just
reason?
we had some friends there. We wanted to get out of New York. It was close enough to Boise, but we didn't. I wasn't playing in Boise yet, and so I
Right.
was kind of thinking like maybe I'd like to be in a little bit bigger city, and we
Right.
didn't. Yeah, so there wasn't a lot of thought to it. It's a great city, but it's not like
I've
a
heard that.
huge
Yeah.
freelance scene. So
But it's somewhere that you could potentially pick and have do some stuff quicker because it's not huge and it's not like totally
yeah, in the end, we didn't end up staying very long. So I
right.
ended up getting called to play in the Hawaii Symphony, um, and that was 2012 when they started back up, and they needed
Hmm.
folks that could come out pretty quickly. So I wasn't in school. I was thrilled to get that call, and I'd
Right. I
never,
remember you told me you were in like Oregon and or Portland and it was raining and cold and
yeah, always
somebody called
rainy.
you.
Yeah, somebody says, "Do you want to come to Hawaii and play in an orchestra?" That's a great phone call.
And so what
Um,
was that first year like?
it was really, I thought it was really exciting. Just I know, so I hadn't played there before, but all the folks that had played in the orchestra, you know, before they went dark for a couple of years, they were just thrilled to be back, and
Right.
I was excited to be there, and um, I really enjoy the colleagues, and that's been a constant, since 2012. A really, really awesome low brass section.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I know I've heard you say that is a lot of the reason why you continue to yeah, make the effort, which is well, we can talk a little bit about also because you've been traveling between Boise and Hawaii. But yeah, we're hoping to have the real all-star low brass section either talking um, on this or doing some sort of educational thing together. And yeah, it's been one of the highlights of my time here is having Jason and you and Rudy and TJ. So yeah, I would say it's really one of the awesome parts of the orchestra is the low brass here.
thank you. And I
Uh,
think we like playing with each other, and we like each other personally, and that doesn't always
yeah,
happen. But
yeah.
um, if
So and so that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just noticing some orchestra people tuning in here, and they
Yeah, yeah,
all know that we stay late and make a lot of noise on stage because we like to play together.
yeah,
So,
yeah. What in that first season, it kind of happened all in a lumped sum. So you were here for like 6 months or a year straight.
yeah, probably more like 6 months, and
Okay.
then it lasted into the summer, and then I went home, and then the next season maybe started not in the fall. I think there was a little bit of a delay, and I'm sure other people will remember that better. But
Right. And so I do yeah, I feel compelled to make the point because we were talking also last week to Randy and stuff. So yeah, I mean for you, which is not the case with everybody, for a lot of people the Hawaii Symphony is a real central part of where they are and what they're doing, and that's I would say even returning to what it was. Uh,
So a lot of people are living here full time, and the orchestra's doing more and more, and so we have a great sense of hope, and also with Dave Moss, who's I know has a lot of big plans. But for you, that wasn't the case. Also, when you joined, and so how did you get back going to Boise? I know Lindsay was there, and what has that been like, and how has your time developed there?
Um, I really like it here. Gradually, I started subbing with the orchestra a lot, and then a second trombone position happened to open up, so I got that audition, and so I was playing here more, and then um, this principal trombone opened up, and so yeah, I I'm here
And
a
that was
lot.
pretty recent, right? You won that position pretty recently, the principal trombone position in Boise.
Right. Yeah, last year. So yeah, so like you said, for me, I travel back and forth a lot because I have
Right.
you
And
know,
so what's
it's
that been? I often call you the most desired trombonist in like the Pacific Ocean, between like Boise and the Pacific Ocean. So what's that been like? A lot of traveling, like flying all the time. And I know it's not always been easy to make both things work, because it's not, neither orchestra is there's a lot going on in both orchestras. And so it's not like, oh, like it's just fine all the time.
yeah. Well, generally, I think the first thing is like again, my colleagues are really great. Like
Hmm.
Jason, the principal trombone, is very supportive of me playing elsewhere, and so it makes it easy. It's just getting on a plane a lot, but
Do you have any tips for flying?
if you fly through San Francisco Airport and you
Uh-huh.
need to practice, the international terminal is where you're going to want to go. If you
Okay.
if you go like it's way out of your way, but there's like the flights are spaced out a little bit, so there's often an empty terminal, and you can go down an escalator, and it's really resonant. So I've practiced many a time in San Francisco Airport.
Hmm. That's good to know. Thank you for the tip. And the acoustics are good.
Mm-hmm.
There's the high ceilings, etc.
For yeah, as airports go.
So, could you? I can imagine there's a lot of similarities between any orchestras. What are some of the differences between playing in Boise and playing in here, or a couple of the differences?
I think HSO is pretty laid back.
Hmm.
Hawaii Symphony,
Hmm.
a little of
But
that.
not in their artistic integrity.
No. I just mean
Right.
personality wise,
I'm just
and
kidding.
yeah,
Right.
artistic integrity,
It's
top
through the
notch.
roof. Right. But the vibe is actually a little bit more aloha, you would
It
say,
really is. Yeah,
representing the aloha spirit, which we're very proud of.
yeah, it really is.
And so I know a couple of people really wanted to know about what you and I think Lindsay did uh, with the union out there. So in Honolulu, we have a very strong union, which the orchestra is proud to be a part of, and the what happened in Boise.
So most big cities and most orchestras are part of the AFM, which is the Musicians Union. And most musicians that are in that never think about it. It's just part of the way it is. Um, Boise was not, and so uh, it just gave the musicians kind of it's just harder to have a voice, and
Right,
so um, and we're very isolated. Actually, that's a similarity that I didn't expect, but Hawaii and
right.
Boise are similarly geographically isolated. I mean, we're on the mainland, but it's like the next biggest big city is Salt Lake, and that's 5 hours or something. And
Whoa.
Portland is 7, and Seattle's 8. So
Uh-huh.
you're just really kind of on your own. And so
Uh-huh.
the being on your own and not having a voice is tough. And so, um, fortunately, a, a group of musicians got together and wanted to reach out to the AFM and to join the AFM, and that is a lot more complicated than it sounds. You'd think you just say, "Hey, we want to do this," but you have to be very diligent and talk to every single colleague So it was not just like one or two people. It was a pretty good group of musicians
Right.
that formed that organizing committee, and then that branched out into even more folks doing a lot of behind the scenes work. And ultimately, um, it was very well received. The vote was, passed with flying colors. We kind of just, it was a unanimous decision, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And so our orchestra had to kind of go along with it. And now things are good, and we're learning a lot.
And it was not, it was done, I guess, how did the management take it? I think pretty well, as you've told me. But initially, was it kind of odd, or did you have to explain what kind of things?
I think it was a shock to them. And I think ultimately they understood why we felt a big change. And I think there was just a little while when we were scared it could have been contentious, and it ultimately didn't end up being that way, but it can turn that way. So luckily it didn't.
Would you say that there was a way that you and the other members, I know that the vice president is in the room as well, was there a way that you handled it, or were able to relay the message that you think went over so that it was not contentious in the end?
Well, I think the most important thing is that the organizing committee, talked individually with literally every single person that plays in the orchestra or subs in the orchestra. Like a lot of people had one-on-one conversations. So there was a real sense of the pulse of the orchestra. So we had confidence that what we were doing was really the will of what everyone wanted. I don't remember the question anymore, but
No, that was totally right. Yeah, no, you really spent time explaining, I think, personally, and being personal about it to everybody you could.
Yeah, so I guess you were saying maybe about in relation to the management. I guess it felt genuine, and like no one was pushing anyone to do anything that they didn't want to. Like it was really coming from a place where it was very democratic. And
also, what is your union local number and why?
So our local, if you look up the AFM jurisdiction for Boise and for most of Idaho, it's local 423. 423 is our house number.
Right, genius.
So we were kind of jokingly referring to our living room as local 423, because before the news broke, you have to be very secretive or private about these meetings with musicians. You don't want to spill the beans, so we had a lot of meetings in local 423. So
it became
when we got recognized and petitioned the AFM to form our own local here, we asked them for that number because it was symbolic.
And now you're an officer, and you're an officer, but the vice president, is my understanding, would be higher up than the officer, right? Does that get contentious?
No, more duties for.
What does the officer have to do?
Just it's better to have like more heads on a decision. So just a lot of just talking through scenarios, and just a lot of communication. I think we're still feeling our way through what it's going to be.
And what that local is going to look like, because like there's a huge range of what locals look like here. We have a major part of real estate in downtown or in Kakako, and so Well, anyway, I think that if there's not any last questions, I would like to really thank you so much for being willing to do this and just keep the Hawaii Symphony musicians just doing stuff in this time. And what's your favorite Hawaiian food?
Ooh.
Or food that you can get in Honolulu that's not necessarily Hawaiian?
Oh my gosh. Really putting me on the spot here.
Or a few. You could have a few things.
I really like Side Street.
Right, which is like kind of like fried rice,
kimchi fried rice.
Right.
Yeah.
Fried chicken.
Yeah, stick to your ribs, kind of Hawaiian comfort food.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, Kat, she's now proven that she has not watched this all the whole time. She said, "What's it like being very dubious?" Okay, thank you, Kat. We already discussed that. You're gonna have to look that up. All right. Well, thank you, Mike, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. This is
All
awesome.
right. I hope to see you in person at some point soon. Oh, George says Big City Diner and Zippy's. Have to agree with that.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Bye.